an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 6, International Relations and Cooperation Appropriation Bill. Cooperation.
I now recognize the Honorable Minister of International Relations and Cooperation.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Honorable members, we are tabling a budget today, just over a year since the formation of the GNU. We continue to make progress in our international relations work. Honorable members, I've just returned from Sevilla in Spain, where I represented President Cyril Ramaphosa, where the compromise de Sevilla was adopted, the Sevilla commitments, by member states of the UN. This Financing for Development Conference that is still ongoing is the most consequential conference on financing for development by the United Nations held over every 10 years. 10 years ago, all member states of the United Nations unanimously endorsed the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This was a historic commitment to secure peace, prosperity, dignity, sustainability for generations to come. This agenda was a collective roadmap negotiated and agreed at the highest level, reflecting the shared aspirations and values of humanity. However, the international community is confronting a blunt reality. The promise of sustainable development is slipping out of reach. More than 85% of sustainable development goals are currently off track, with setbacks particularly acute in the fight against hunger, extreme poverty, and rising inequalities. The climate crisis is deepening this trajectory, with extreme weather events inflicting severe human and economic losses, particularly across Africa and other climate-vulnerable regions. These interlinked crises are testing the resilience of societies and exposing long-standing structural injustices. The erosion of trust in multilateralism reflects the system's persistent failure to respond effectively. At the heart of this failure lies persistent gap in financing. The global shortfall to achieve the SDGs is now estimated at over $4 trillion per year, while official development assistance commitments remains unmet. It is against this backdrop that countries of the United Nations have committed themselves to close the $4 trillion annual funding gap through the Sevilla Decompromise or commitment to achieve the objectives of Agenda 2030. South Africa has been resolute in its commitment to multilateralism with the UN at its pinnacle, and we are working for real world support and commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Course of Africa Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, silencing of the guns in the continent. We view these August forums as the anchors of North-South cooperation, and our role in the G7 and the G20 will remain to continue to be the bridge between the global North and the global South. South Africa, with Spain as the host country of the Financing for Development Conference, have strived for synergies with our G20 presidents to nudge the world towards closing the financing gaps for the SDGs, the reform of the financial architecture, and other priorities. The budget we are tabling here today is an enabler of this work that needs to continue. The department's allocation increases modestly from just above 7 billion rands in the 2024-2025 financial year to a 7.90 billion rands in the 2025-2026 financial year, and a further to a 7 2.5 billion in 2027-2028 financial year. While this reflects a lower growth rate of 2% over the medium term, it sustains our commitment to deepen South Africa's global presence and influence. By prioritizing sound fiscal management and cooperative partnership with the National Treasury, we deepen our capacity to absorb and exchange rate volatility within the existing ceilings and find innovative ways to address critical vacancies. Our non-alignment posture is not a neutrality, as some will want us to believe. It is the dynamic balance between our national interests and our unshakable progressive internationalism. Non-alignment envisions a world where peaceful coexistence drowns out the clamor of conflict. Cooperation triumphs over exploitation. The insecurity created by nuclear armaments is fully addressed. A rules-based order anchored in international law protects the vulnerable and binds us all, including the powerful. As we mark 70 years of the Freedom Charter, our human rights outlook continues to inform our international relations perspective. Our anti-war stance is the aspirations of many South Africans from all walks of life who declared through the Freedom Charter that South Africa shall strive to maintain world peace and the settlement of all international disputes by negotiations, not war. We continue to advance our strategic interests through economic diplomacy. Over the past year, our economic diplomacy has been strategically directed towards increasing trade and expanding our diplomatic presence in high-growth global markets, with an aim to contribute to achieve our country's objectives of achieving 3% economic growth. We will continue to pursue the following strategic actions: accelerated regional integration, actively implementing and integrating SADC and AU strategies, prioritizing critical road and port infrastructure. To unlock continental trade corridors, we aim for economic integration to grow above the current 21% economic trade within SADC. Facilitating market access, proactively supporting partnerships for South African businesses and expanding across Africa. Anchor policy in national interest. Our external engagements must therefore align with domestic imperatives of eradicating poverty, reducing unemployment and inequality. Leveraging African continental free trade, agently aligned policies, programs to capture tangible benefits from the Africa Free Trade Area. Optimize diplomatic footprints, complete the foreign policy diplomatic representation review to ensure a cost-benefit balance and enhance efficiency. Compatriots, our G20 presidency has reached the halfway mark, and recently at the third Sherpa meeting, I shared the following perspective, and I quote, "While the world runs on our resources, the value does not stay here. The minerals lives raw. The batteries, the solar panels will also power artificial intelligence. While we are not in the main National Development Bank, we've seen the following tangible outcomes. South Africa leverages its BRICS partnerships to power its green future. 2.9 billion from the new development bank is building the grid backbone for renewable energy. Boosting energy security through tangible projects like the integration of 7 renewable energy projects of independent power producers in Uppington, the construction of transmission lines and substations for Soweto area, and construction of transmission lines of Akalachang Sterrekas Power Station. A 3.5 billion loan is also transforming Durban Port into a world-class African getaway. This upgrade slashes shipping times, attracts mega vessels, and unlocks regional growth, making Agenda 2063 trade goals a reality. These are not just outcomes of economic diplomacy and that of the BRICS Bank. It's concerted efforts to overcome the triple challenges of poverty, inequality, and joblessness. Honorable members, this year marks the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. This is an institution that was created at a time where Africa was still an epicenter of exploitation and colonialism. To this day, the UN is constituted in this unrepresented manner, particularly the Security Council. We will continue to call for the reform of the UN and the UN Security Council in particular to be able to respond to global insecurity. As majority of conflicts continue to be in Africa, Africa must have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. The UN was created with the promise of equality as a system of international law, which binds all nations who sign up to the UN Charter. It is in this regard that we continue to call for 2 permanent seats for the African member states. Honorable members, in Sudan, we are witnessing the world's gravest humanitarian disaster. Over 30 million people need aid. 12 million people are displaced. It is a moral emergency. We will continue to engage at a bilateral and multilateral platform to seek peace for the Sudan. We recently welcomed home our brave soldiers who stood tall, securing security in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo for peace. We will continue to seek peace in the DRC through the bilateral and multilateral platform. In Ukraine, we see children torn from home. South Africa with Qatar and Canada, and the Holy See is actively pushing for both sides of their return, a core goal of the African Peace Initiative, which demands humanitarian action, prisoner releases, and protecting the young. And in Gaza, a father's words echoes the horror. Here it's like an apple collapsing. You feel like you are inhuman. This suffering is why South Africa continues to seek relief in international law at the ICJ and the ICC. We welcome other initiatives from the EU and its member states and other regions of the world that are imposing economic sanctions and arms embargo, as diplomatic pressure will be the one that can prevail over the intransigent Israel regime. We act, we engage, we leverage diplomacy, because just peace is the non-negotiable foundation for humanity's future. This is the practical application of Ubuntu. As the world descends to our shores for the G20 summit in November, we have got no doubt that with the help of our citizens and yourself, honorable members, we will host an impactful G20 summit that will achieve ambitious goals. I would like to conclude by expressing deep gratitude for our officials domestically and across the globe. You fly our flag high, turning diplomacy into impactful action. When earthquakes rocks Myanmar and traffickers preyed on our stranded citizens, you were their lifeline. When Mr. Huksam and Mr. Potgieter needed to come home from Equatorial Guinea, you made it happen. Every single day you impart a bit of South Africa to the world. You are the agents of a better Africa and a better world. This is the power of our foreign services. This is the dedication that gives me absolute confidence that the world will be a better place tomorrow. We are tabling this budget to enable this diplomatic work to triumph. I thank you, Honorable House Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next speaker is the Honorable Maumapelo. Order, honorable members.
And honorable members, we start as we ended in the last financial year, and we will end as we began here today. I greet the minister and your collective from the department, together with the administration and the honorable members from the portfolio committee. As you know, honorable members, we are ardent multilateralists. We believe in anti-imperialism. We believe in embeddedness in solidarity, and we are progressive internationalists. These are the characteristics which are embedded in the approach of the African National Congress, a disciplined force of the left. We say so, honorable members, to remind the House that we must always remember that matters of international relations are pursued under conditions that we don't choose nor desire. I'll make an example. As we debate here today, we are pursuing our objective as South Africa globally under the conditions of the trumpeting trumpets of the unconventional methods of governance from the United States of America. These trumpeting trumpets from the United States of America have brought instability on the economies of the world, including the US itself inflicting pain on the people of the United States of America. We are debating here today under conditions of the wars in Sudan, in Congo, in Ukraine, and we want to applaud the president and you, the minister, and your team for continuing to avoid the brouhaha which is going on in the country and focus on the work at hand of ensuring that there's negotiations in as far as conflicts are concerned, to make sure that we are true to our stance as the Republic of South Africa. Honorable members, in the first quarter of this year, 2025, foreign direct investment in South Africa went to an impressive 11.7 billion. I'm saying this is impressive because it did not happen by chance. It happened because there's work that has been done by DIRCO, including all and sundry who are in the executive arm of the state, to make sure that there's investments that are taking place into our country. That is very impressive, Minister. We want to support you in making sure that these foreign direct investments continue to be intensified. We know that our population growth is growing at a rate almost equal to the rate of the growth of our economy. And we know that according to the Bureau of Economic Research, by 2030, our economy will be growing and hovering between 1.5 and 2%. So when you compare the economic growth with population growth, you can see that by 2030, there will be equalization. So the strategic question will be, how do we proactively ensure that we deal with this equalization between population growth and economic growth? So we want to ask and urge DTIC and DIRCO to make sure that the variables that have ensured that there's growth in the first quarter of the FDIs, you focus some of the resources, Minister, on those important economic variables. Secondly, we want to suggest to the department that an important variable of tourism is quite key to the growth of South Africa's economy. Therefore, we are suggesting that necessary deepened collaboration between DTIC, DIRCO, and tourism is necessary, including Home Affairs, so that we can deal with some of the impediments which are a hindrance to tourists coming in large numbers to South Africa. Thirdly, we are making a suggestion that because there's a problem of trade attachés, Minister, who are under DTIC, it's quite clear that our budget constraints will not allow us in the near future to have those trade attachés from DTIC embedded in all the embassies all over the world. So our suggestion as the committee is that because DIRCO is present in missions, there must be a discussion with the presidency to implore upon the presidency to consider a proposal for the job descriptions of the trade attachés from DTIC to be migrated to DIRCO. We think if we do that, and DIRCO focuses on this important variable in the economic equation of foreign direct investments that we need in South Africa, will make some progress. Honorable members, the committee is also suggesting that, Minister, for us to be truly held accountable by both the committee and the people of South Africa, the House must on a quarterly basis receive a comprehensive report on geopolitical situations and how South Africa is managing the dynamics of these geopolitical environments. The report having been tabled here in the House, is the view of the Portfolio Committee that that report must then be delegated to the Portfolio Committee for the Portfolio Committee to go to the people of South Africa to debate that report on geopolitics and how we are dealing with that situation, and come back to the House to report to the House so that there is necessary familiarization by our people and the House on how South Africa is dealing with matters of geopolitics. We are also suggesting that we need to accelerate our movement towards ensuring that the situation in Sudan is attended to, and we hope that we can prioritize the humanitarian problems which are emerging in Sudan. We are also suggesting as the committee that necessary discussions must continue to ensue between DIRCO and Treasury. Because when you look at this budget, Minister, which is hovering around 7 billion, and you exclude from that equation the G20, you will realize that there's no growth of the budget allocated to DIRCO. And when you look at South Africa's economy, the truth is that domestic variables will by and large remain the same. Therefore, the only variable where we stand an opportunity to make a dent in as far as the growth of the economy is concerned is foreign direct investment. And therefore, DIRCO has to be necessarily equipped. It must have the necessary resources to mobilize all the resources globally so that those resources can be brought here into South Africa through foreign direct investment, which will then ensure the growth of our gross domestic product, which will then enable us to deal with challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. We are also suggesting, Minister, that in as far as the trumpets of the US are concerned, and the tension that is going on between Ukraine and Russia, South Africa, one of the things it should consider is to ensure that there's a discussion that takes place with NATO. Because NATO is a force multiplier for the retrogressive forces that do not want peace all over the world. Lastly, we applaud South Africa for the discussions that are taking place with the European Union as part of making sure that they understand the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement, and as far as making sure that we strengthen our economic ties and political ties with the EU, so that the EU can then be integrated into efforts of building a better Africa and a better world. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Douglas.
Thank you,
Order,
Honourable
honourable
House
members.
Chairperson.
Proceed.
Thank you, Honourable House Chairperson, and Honourable Minister, Deputy Ministers, and Honourable members and the people at home. I greet you all in the name of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and in the language of the Khoi and San, the First Nation Aboriginal people of South Africa, Kaites. I rise to reject this budget vote 6 on international relations, not to reject diplomacy itself, but to rescue this budget from irrelevance, not to diminish international engagement, but to enhance it for all South Africans rather than just the lucky few elites who benefit from DIRCO's current policy directions. This budget vote is a superficial budget increase. The total budget for DIRCO increased only to 8.9 million, with a mere 0.13% rise, far below inflation, effectively a budget cut in real terms. This is despite extra costs in 2025, like South Africa chairing the G20, hosting many international summits and meetings at taxpayers' expense in navigating serious geopolitical tensions like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, BRICS plus realignments, ICJ cases, Iran-USA conflict, the DRC, and claims of white genocide, which we have to refute as a country. Government claims diplomatic growth through this budget vote, but the budget tells a different story. In truth, real funding for transformation and access to international markets and grassroots impact of DIRCO's foreign missions is shrinking. 191.5 million allocated for South Africa's G20 presidency may sound like a lot and a just cause, but it does not translate to policy imperatives for resource nationalization and beneficiation and ownership of resource value chains and land redistribution and local economic development and job creation. It does not speak to the needs of the South African people. There is no parallel increase in economic diplomacy for SMMEs, township exports, or indigenous trade access, or for black industrialists. There's no rural travel funds, township trade delegations, or African Aboriginal cultural exports. There's no, the elite multilateralism is funded, but township traders, SMEs, youth businesses, and Aboriginal and Indigenous African creatives are excluded from foreign trade and economic tourism and entertainment platforms. This budget vote 6 is not a budget for poor people and for our diplomacy. There are many planned DIRCO program cuts under this anti-poor, pro-austerity budget, which is going to harm DIRCO's operations. And these cuts cut the core programs of diplomacy and foreign relations, which will weaken service delivery. It is therefore clear that this budget favors ceremonial events and maintaining status quo over needed institutional reform. More than half the budget is going to a bloated salary bill, but there is still no hiring to fill critical staff vacancies, and this budget does not indicate that staff will be redeployed to critical vacancies where there are staff duplications or redundancies. Compensation of employees makes up 46.4% of this budget, 3.29 billion rand. Yet vacancies remain critical. Treasury has capped hiring and imposed ceilings, making it impossible to fill posts, especially trade attaches abroad, which then leads to a lack of trade access for our South African businesses in general. DIRCO is overloaded with salaries it can't afford. This is a lack of leadership and of planning and of management. One of the biggest threats to this and future budgets is that foreign exchange risks are not budgeted for. 60% of DIRCO's spending is in foreign currency. Yet there is no contingency fund for exchange rate volatility. If the rand weakens, millions more will be needed, but no top-up mechanism is budgeted in this budget. It looks like DIRCO and the GNU budget planning ignores financial realities. The ANC-led GNU is gambling with taxpayer money without protection against currency shocks. Another deep concern is the lack of performance metrics for real job creation. The department says it undertakes 60 economic diplomacy events per year, yet there are no figures on SMMEs involved or metrics on value extracted for the local economy of South Africa. In no measurable impact on jobs or township exports are mentioned. In DIRCO right now, economic diplomacy is a slogan, not a metric. Where are the stats on DIRCO's real-world economic impact for township economies and SMMEs in places like the Cape Flats? The committee noted major delays in visa processing. This harms tourism, business investment, and student exchange and cultural diplomacy. Government cries for foreign investment but builds a visa wall to keep those out, which it doesn't like. South Africa does not suffer from a lack of resources, it suffers from a lack of leadership and geopolitical macroeconomic imagination and vision. In the last fiscal year, over 6.9 billion was spent, but less than 10% of that was filtered back into our formal economies and into our indigenous communities. Mr. Chair, as Umkhonto we Sizwe, in terms of our foreign policy, we condemn the starvation and bombardment of Gaza. Peace must come and a two-state solution pursued, but only after the genocide stops and the bombs stop. Hostages are returned and justice prevails at the ICJ for all sides. We oppose NATO's expansionism and the illegal and hypocritical bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities by Israel and the USA bringing the world to the brink of global nuclear war and condemn these actions in the strongest terms. We support South Africa becoming a greater part of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, growing in the BRICS Plus environment and joining in the Global South to ensure that our people are benefited at a grassroots level and not just at a strategic level. Who are the people that are going with the president to the Oval Office? It's white monopoly capital, unelected people that are speaking on behalf of South Africans who can never be in that Oval Office. They're speaking on behalf of business, not upon the lives of our people, not the people who are hurt, not the people who are affected by the negativity that was brought there by these delegations from the DA, delegations from Solidarity, delegations now from the Freedom Front Plus that was just there. These are traitors to our people. They are traitors to our economy, and they must be arrested and tried for their traitor ways, because what they're doing is making us to look bad in the eyes of a greater superpower, asking them to come in and bully us and to make sure that our economy is destroyed, making sure that our economy is pulled down. They want to come here and they want to maybe even bring troops here. Why? Because they are scared of losing the land. They are scared of losing the land that they lost and that they stole and they still hold on to today. We reject all NATO's expansionism and illegal and illiberal and problems, what NATO is doing with Russia and Ukraine. We need to make sure that there's peace in Russia and in Ukraine and in that conflict. We reject all imperial war making, and we reject outright the claims that there is a white genocide in South Africa. And this lie was once again being put forward to America by this other delegation. MKP's vision is to make sure that our people benefit from diplomacy. Our people budget from this, Mr. Chair. South Africa must stop behaving like a guest in the global economy. We are not guests. We are the hosts of a coming Pan-African renaissance where we as Africans own our land, we own our resources, we manufacture and export our own goods and services and benefit the many, not just the white monopoly capital few. If DIRCO is to matter, it must move from marble to mission, from talk-shops to action, from ceremony to strategy, from foreign indulgence and to domestic empowerment. Kaigangans, I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Smith.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation, under the stewardship of Minister Ronald Lamola, is quickly becoming an arm of the state that operates behind the veil of presidential protection and secrecy. Over the last year, Minister Lamola has appeared before this committee only twice. And when his deputies deign to attend, they do so only to demonstrate that they have not progressed from the 1960s, from which they teleport their ideological claptrap, which erodes our credibility on the international stage and insults our largest trading partners to the detriment of our country's fragile future. It is pointless analyzing the budgets and making recommendations to a ministry that acts as though it exists as an arm of the party and not the state, operates not with the interests of our country and its constitution at heart, but with those of the ANC and its problematic international allies and questionable funders. And while the president only exercises his prerogative to execute South Africa's foreign policy due to the support of the Democratic Alliance and other GNU partners, we continue to bend over backwards for the likes of Mr. Vexelberg and Chancellor House before worrying about the millions of unemployed South Africans who need a foreign policy that will lift them out of poverty. Instead, we have a ministry which, in the same week that it accepted a 4.7 billion euro trade deal with the European Union, refers to its member states as neo-colonialists. We have a ministry that parades itself as the vanguard of international law and morality while trying to gag members of the Portfolio Committee from referring to Russian President Vladimir Putin as a rightful war criminal facing an ICC arrest warrant. We have a ministry that sees it fit to include corrupt cadres and tenderpreneurs on official state visits to France, while our international trade officers have had 0 trade councillors appointed since 2023. And to top it off, we have a Minister of DIRCO begging the Black Business Council to defend failed and defunct policies such as BEE, not even an area in its policy ambit, which only serves to repel foreign direct investment and kill our economic diplomacy agenda. Honourable Chairperson, South Africa is now 7 months into our G20 presidency with little to show for it. What was supposed to be a key opportunity to set a clear South African agenda and leverage international best practice to unlock our country's potential is quickly becoming yet another ANC-dominated talk shop with 0 parliamentary oversight. As far as the Sherpa track goes, many G20 meetings under South Africa's leadership have not been able to produce even a single coherent communique, resulting in chairperson summaries that are contested by member states, tarnishing the credibility of our entire G20 presidency. Embarrassingly, at the foreign ministers' meeting of the G20 held in February, even the routine group photo fell through, with no official explanation given for its last-minute cancellation. But more worryingly, DIRCO's power games against the Treasury meant that government could not even get their ducks in a row as to what issues belong in the Sherpa and finance tracks. When discussions around the cost of capital were erroneously allocated to the Sherpa track and not the finance track where they belong, member states rebelled against the decision. This is an indictment on this ministry, which has embarrassed our country's international capabilities. This is not how to chair a group of 20. Chairperson, one of the core mandates of this department is contributing to the creation of an enabling international environment for South African businesses. This means that DIRCO has to share co-responsibility for growing the economy and creating jobs through its policy choices and diplomatic efforts. As we stand here today, Mercedes-Benz has temporarily closed its East London plant, and other export-oriented jobs are at risk because DIRCO's decisions to defend and protect malign international actors has placed South Africa in the crosshairs of global economic powers and trade allies. None of these malign actors have the resources or even the interest in assisting South African firms who are now at risk because of intellectually vacant foreign policy objectives. In a context where we are dealing with an unemployment crisis that includes the highest youth unemployment rate in the world, one would expect that DIRCO would place its focus squarely on easing tensions with key trading partners and enabling access to new markets. DIRCO does neither. Instead, it provokes the ire of our largest trading partners and international allies, many of whom do not need to trade with South Africa, but do so as an act of solidarity. If this is how Minister Lamola wants to realign South Africa's foreign policy, we will soon fall into the embrace of the undemocratic world. Under this ministry, we do not have a South African foreign policy. We have an ANC diktat that serves neither country nor people. It is ironic then that one of the themes of the G20 is solidarity, when DIRCO shows no solidarity with the people of our country or with the liberal democratic world as a whole. While the DA is tired of these international double standards, we are, unlike the ANC, a responsible party with the country's interests at heart. This is ultimately what DIRCO needs and what South Africans rightly deserve. Thank you.
The next speaker is the Honorable Mhlongo.
Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF, President Julius Malema, Commissars, fighters, Africans in Africa and in the diaspora. We stand here today to reject on behalf of the EFF budget vote 6 on international relations and cooperation with the contempt it deserves. Chairperson, the world is changing right in front of our eyes, with imperialist forces reasserting their power in ever so crude a manner. The impunity in which Israel is waging its genocidal campaign in Palestine, its unprovoked attacks in Iran with the assistance of the US, the unending sponsored wars in Africa, particularly in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in South Sudan, with Trump's unilateral reordering of global economics. All of these are pointers to a re-emergent bold imperialist agenda. Africa ought to have learned her lessons from centuries of colonial repression and exploitation, but seemingly we have learned nothing. And as previously, we are sitting like ducks while imperialist forces are advancing on the same agenda that led to the Berlin Conference. We have not been able as a continent to redefine how we position ourselves to advance the interests of our people and to forge a unified African response to global challenges. South Africa's role as a voice of re-emergent Pan-Africanist force has faded gradually from the Zuma years and is now almost non-existent in the Ramaphosa administration. As a result, this country and the rest of the continent remain spectators while the West continue to loot our resources and develop their people. This department that you are leading, Mr. Lamola, is at the center of the lack of imagination and leadership. It is deprived of ideology, ignorant of the past, and therefore incompetent to deal with the present and the future. This manifests in mutant but critical administrative failures. You are unable to even fill up vacant posts in the department, and your budget makes no provision for this. This means you will not be able to perform the most basic of your functions. You have no trade attachés in strategic partner nations, making you unable to leverage key advantages that could be leveraging from these countries. You have no ongoing strategic approach to strengthening political, economic, and social relations with traditional friendly nations due to your ideological provocations influenced by your newly formed friends in the GNU, the DA. You have not leveraged the vastness of the African continent and its endowment with key natural resources. As a result, you have just witnessed Trump gloating about the minerals that the US is going to loot from Congo. The US and her imperialist partners will continue to loot Africa because South Africa and the rest of the continent have no leadership bold enough to assert Africa's role in the development of her own people and to fight off this neo-colonial looting of the continent. South Africa's G20 presidency has done absolutely nothing to advance the interests of the country and those of the continent. We have cowered to the whims of Western powers, even as we preside over this powerful global organization. We have in the committee proposed that DIRCO should outline tangible benefits that we should be able to measure at the end of the presidency of the G20, how ordinary citizens and SMMEs are going to benefit and as well as the country and the continent. You will not be able to do so because there are no such benefits. Chairperson, our previously firm voice calling for the reform of the UN Security Council has now dissipated into insignificance. Without a strong opposition from the Global South to the continued domination of decision-making body by only 6 nations, global affairs will continue being tilted in favor of imperialists. We must be asking what value or continued participation in the UN brings to this country and to the continent, and whether it is worth our while being members of an entity that continues to favor and it is detected too by the interest of the West. Overall, this is an austerity budget which does not take into consideration inflation and will hamper the operations of the ministry. Finally, Chairperson, we must take this opportunity to call on Treasury and DIRCO to ensure that the funds allocated to continue our case against the apartheid state of Israel in the International Court of Justice for their genocidal crimes against Palestine is not compromised. We stand to reject this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Adebe.
Thank you, House Chairperson. As the IFP, we approach this debate on Budget Vote 6 with the seriousness it deserves, recognizing the pivotal role international relations play in advancing South Africa's national interests. We acknowledge the department's tabled Strategic Plan 2025-2030, Annual Performance Plan 2025-2026, and the budget allocation of 7.1 billion. As the IFP, we view this not merely as a financial appropriation, but as a vital diplomatic tool to safeguard our sovereignty, promote South Africa's national interests, and drive inclusive development across borders. In this ever-evolving geopolitical climate, our foreign policy must be pragmatic, principled, and people-centered. The IFP welcomes the department's alignment with the Government of National Unity's Medium-Term Development Plan and the National Development Plan 2030. We reaffirm our support for a foreign policy based on multilateralism, diplomacy, and an ethical international order. With limited fiscal space, we reiterate the need to scale down the number of foreign missions and prioritize those aligned with South Africa's strategic economic interests. Missions that do not yield clear benefits, particularly in trade and investment, should be reassessed. Our missions abroad must actively drive economic diplomacy and secure stronger bilateral and multilateral partnerships that translate into jobs and growth at home. Peace missions must be grounded in budgetary reality and national interests,
South Africa has long prided itself on its commitment to peace on the continent and beyond. However, our peacekeeping efforts must be guided by realistic mandates and clearly defined outcomes. Too often we extend our foreign ambitions without the requisite budgetary support. The IFP calls for a more focused and more effective approach to peace missions, where diplomacy is paired with clear political will and long-term sustainability. As conflicts intensify globally, from Eastern Europe to the Middle East, the IFP supports South Africa's non-aligned position. But non-alignment must never mean silence in the face of human suffering. We urge DIRCO to stand firm on the two-state solution in the Israel-Palestine conflict, grounded in international law, and to unequivocally condemn all forms of violence against civilians. South Africa's moral voice must not waver, but it must also be balanced with a commitment to constructive engagement and peace building. It is time to realign South Africa's foreign policy with the domestic priorities of our people, particularly youth employment, energy partnerships, and technology transfer. We must also rebuild our credibility in multilateral forums, ensuring that our votes and statements reflect constitutional values, human rights, and global equity. In conclusion, Honorable House Chairperson, the IFP supports Budget Vote 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next speaker is the Honorable Wessels. Order, Honorable Members. Order, Honorable Members. If you want to have a conversation, please go out. Never there.
Die agbare huisvoorsitter, wanneer ons oor internasionale betrekkinge praat, is die bepalende faktor uit die aard van die saak Suid-Afrika en haar mense. Wat is belangrik vir Suid-Afrika en wat is tot voordeel van haar mense? Dit is ook so, en dit word baie gesê, dat as 'n soewereine staat ons nie moet toelaat dat ander state ons voorsê en moet dikteer wat in Suid-Afrika gebeur nie. En dit is wel reg en goed so. En dit is ook in gevolge internasionale reg so, dat een staat nie by 'n ander staat se binnelandse sake mag inmeng nie. Maar dit is ook so, dat die realiteit van die moderne wêreld 'n interafhanklike posisie is. En dat ons afhanklik is van ander state, en dat ons afhanklik is van handelsvernote, en dat ons nie net kan doen wat ons wil nie. Want op die einde van die dag is baie van daardie handelsooreenkomste, is dit wat die lewensbestaan van ons mense verseker. Een van daardie voorbeelde is die AGOA-ooreenkoms wat die FSA betref en behels. As dit tot niets sou gaan baie Suid-Afrikaners hulle werke verloor. Dit is dan ook so dat wanneer ons oor internasionale betrekkinge praat, ons moet besef dat ons nie kan bakkant staan en verwag dat ander state ons en Afrika moet red nie. Suid-Afrika en Afrika kan slegs homself red. Europa gaan ons nie red nie. Ons kan ook nie net wil bakkant staan en verwag dat die wêreld vir ons iets moet gee, sonder dat ons die nodige internasionale diplomatie dan wel uitoefen en dit na die tafel toe neem wat hulle dan in ruil wil hê nie. En dit is waar die soewereiniteit en die beskerming van soewereiniteit so 'n bietjie ingewikkeld raak. Want vir daardie behoud van daardie internasionale handelsverhoudings en ooreenkomste wat ons nodig het vir ons mense en tot voordeel van ons mense, moet ons ook luister wat ander state sê en wat hulle op die tafel sit. En moet ons na die tafel toe gaan om te onderhandel. Ons kan nie 'n meerderwaardige houding neem nie. Minister, ons moet die verhoudinge met ons grootste handelsvennote herstel in belang van die mense van Suid-Afrika. As ons dit nie doen nie, gaan werkloosheid nog meer toeneem. Dit is ook so dat wanneer ons kyk na die hele ekonomie van Suid-Afrika, is byvoorbeeld die AGOA-ooreenkoms 'n druppel in die emmer. Maar met en ander sprekers het daarna verwys, die ontoereikende ekonomiese groei wat ons tans ervaar, is 0,2% wat AGOA bydra tot die Suid-Afrikaanse ekonomie eintlik wel iets wat nie maar net afgemaak kan word as niks nie. Ook moet daar na die hele waardeketting gekyk word. Dit is goed dat daar nuwe handelsvennote gesoek word. Dit is goed dat daar gekyk word om nuwe bande te smee. Maar kom ons, terwyl ons in hierdie krisis is, sorg dat ons daardie tradisionele vennote oppas en koester.
Honourable Member, your
en
time is
bewaar.
now expired. The next speaker is the Honourable Kobe.
Thank you, House Chair. Chairperson, let us begin by giving credit where it's due. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation has shown signs of life. We are not ready to nominate it for a turnaround award just yet, but let's acknowledge the baby steps. Targets now seemingly are slightly clearer, and the African Renaissance Fund has at least remembered that it needs an impact assessment. So that's progress, and we are thankful for it. However, let's not be swept away by diplomatic glitter. South Africa continues to spend like a G7 member while trying to govern like a developing state. The 3.45 billion spent on foreign missions across 115 embassies, high commissions, and consulates, yet no measurable system to evaluate what those embassies actually produce. It's not diplomacy. It's a global sightseeing tour at taxpayers' expense with no regard for a sound cost-benefit analysis. We have embassies in places most South Africans can't pronounce, let alone locate. Nouakchott, Malabo, Bangui. Perhaps the department is pioneering a tourism strategy for budget analysis, or maybe just a very expensive geography lesson. In Tel Aviv, there's a mission listed as non-operational, yet we still managed to spend 27.2 million on it. Meanwhile, back at home, we are told the department faces staffing constraints, compensation ceilings, and exchange rate fluctuations. Yet somehow there's always more money to buy more property abroad and renovate buildings that we barely use. House Chair, the department speaks beautifully of inclusive economic growth and sustainable development, but these lofty ambitions seem to vanish somewhere between Jeddah and Kinshasa. The strategic mission of the department remains as vague as a diplomatic communique. As we are still wondering as Action SA how this sprawling diplomatic footprint contributes to domestic objectives of job creation, poverty alleviation, or the empowerment of local townships and rural communities and local SMMEs. So yes, the department is improving, but like a leaky boat with shiny new curtains, it may look better, but it's still not seaworthy. Action SA will therefore vote against budget vote 6, not out of hostility, Honorable Minister, but out of a desire to see diplomacy that is smart, strategic, and dare we dream it, cost effective. It's time to cut the fat and keep the mission, and not multiply missions to fund a foreign policy that is still struggling to find its purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Deputy Minister Botha.
Honourable Chairperson, Minister Lamola and dear Maroka, Chair of the PC, Honourable Mamupelo, DG of DIRCO, DG Tango, we emit a polycrisis characterized by increased unilateralism that requires bold, principled leadership. Our foreign policy is not a mirror of the world as it is, but is a compass for the world as it should be. Gramsci reminded us that people do not fight for ideas, but for a form of life which they understand and can defend. We continue to deepen ties with the GRULAT countries through bilateral relations and in multilateral groups such as CARICOM, CELAC, and SADC-ALBA TCP. We look forward to the successful hosting of the AU CARICOM Summit in Addis Ababa in September 2025. Priority areas of cooperation includes energy, mining, agriculture, defense, education, higher education, science and technology, trade. At the multilateral level, we collaborate with the GRULAT countries through BRICS, G20, G77, plus China, NAM, and the UN. We reaffirmed our unflinching solidarity with Cuba. We seek constructive engagement with our strategic partner, the United States of America, being a principled strategic partner of South Africa. With Canada, we share values and collaborate on global governance, sustainable development, and inclusive growth. Cuba, ladies and gentlemen, remains a valid partner in medical diplomacy. On Palestine self-determination and statehood in 2024, Armenia, Slovenia, Ireland, Norway, Spain, the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and the Barbados have formally recognized Palestine's statehood. South Africa welcomes the letter issued by 9 EU foreign ministers of Belgium, Finland, Ireland, Luxembourg, Poland, Portugal, Slovenia, Spain, and Sweden.
Honourable Deputy Minister, will you just take a seat, please? Why do you want to be recognized, Honourable Member?
Yeah, I raised the Deputy Minister is misleading the House.
Take your seat, please. Take your seat. Please continue, Deputy Minister.
We appreciate the 9 EU foreign ministers that have issued a call to the EU to implement the ICJ advisory opinion on provisional measures. Spain and Ireland formally joined South Africa's case and stated that they will comply with the ICJ's interim orders. Belgium's Wallonia region suspended ammunition export license to Israel. Canada halted military export permits. Denmark is engaged in a court process aimed at suspending export of F-35 jet components. High-level engagements were held with Ireland, UK, Portugal, Italy, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and the EU. We convened structured bilateral mechanisms with Croatia, Hungary, Poland, and Slovakia. We commend the UK for responding to the ICJ advisory opinion on the question of Mauritius Chagos Archipelago. We call on Spain and France to reflect the same spirit and work with the EU to bring conclusion the last footprint of colonialism in Africa by supporting self-determination of the people of Western Sahara. The 8th South African EU summit reaffirmed shared goals, and the EU's 4.7 billion euro investment pledge is commendable. Relationship with the Nordics and Baltic states are strong. South Africa was central in shaping the pact for the future. We'll continue to lead efforts across Africa on universal health coverage through President Ramaphosa's continued leadership as the EU champion on preventable pandemics and diseases. We participated in the Commonwealth Heads of Governments meeting in Samoa in 2024. And at UNGA 80, we will continue to advocate for the reform of the UNSC based on Eswalweni consensus. We are in our second term in the UN Peacebuilding Commission, where we participate in open debates in the area formula of the UNSC. We wish to congratulate the newly elected President of Young Women of Africa, Precious Banda, and the ANC Youth League's Secretary General Goodle as the second Vice President for Africa in the World Federation of Democratic Youth, WFDY. The Diplomatic Academy will launch a youth peace mediators mentoring program involving 15 countries, including Finland, Egypt, Haiti, Turkey, Colombia, Ethiopia, India, Indonesia, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Nigeria, Qatar, South Sudan, and Ukraine, supporting a resolution of the UN 2250 on youth, peace, and security. Each generation must define and fulfill its mission. Minister Lamola responded to the youth calls and directed that the Diplomatic Academy will shortly commence with the cadet diplomatic training program for 25 young South Africans. Minister Lamola, we recognize the honor bestowed onto you by the State of Palestine's President, the Order of the Star of Merit by President Mohammed Abbas on self-determination advancement of the people of Palestine, and in particular, the way in which you have championed as a Minister of Justice and continue to champion as a Minister of DIRCO, the ICJ case of South Africa. I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, we wish to acknowledge the continued leadership of the recipient of the Ubuntu Oliver Tambo Leadership Award in Diplomacy, the reward allocated to Ambassador Welile Nslapo Nomdugwe Mkize, and we wish as this generation to extend our appreciation for his continued wisdom in the nourishment of us as a generation that are able, capable, and up to the task to define our generational mission. Amandla.
The next speaker is the Honorable Meshu. Switch on the microphone, Reverend.
Honorable House Chair, honorable members, the ACDP notes the department's 24-25 budget allocation of 6.57 billion rands, which is a 5% reduction in the context of the medium-term development plan of 2024 to 2029. South Africa is dependent on global trade and financial inflows. This makes us particularly exposed to the global economic developments. In the short space of time, global developments have already had a significant impact on the domestic economic outlook. The ACDP further notes Cabinet's allocation of 226 million rands for the G20 presidency. But this honor must be leveraged to restore credibility, not squandered on divisive ideological alignments. South Africa's foreign policy must serve our people's interests, not partisan politics or performative diplomacy. While we welcome DIRCO's stated aim to boost economic diplomacy and support South Africa's investments across the continent, the ACDP raises serious questions over both budgetary priorities and foreign policy direction. We support initiatives like the Lesotho Highlands Water Project and plans for the Grand Inga Dam in the DRC, which, if finally realized, could meet regional energy needs. We also take note of South Africa's role in advancing economic partnerships in sectors such as green hydrogen, water resource management, oil and gas, and intra-African trade, underpinned by 46 structured bilateral mechanisms. However, the department's continued insistence on a human rights-based foreign policy rings hollow when applied selectively. This government has, on the one hand, claimed neutrality on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, yet on the other hand, has rushed to take legal action against Israel at the International Court of Justice, falsely accusing it of genocide. These actions contradict our stated commitment to non-alignment and diplomatic balance. They come at a cost. 35 million is already allocated for ICC-related proceedings, with a further 36.6 million rands earmarked in 2026-27. The ACDP strongly opposes this misdirection of taxpayers' funds at a time when a diplomatic capital with key partners, especially the United States, is rapidly eroding. This erosion is particularly evidenced by the US recently suspending military cooperation to provide cover for this under the banner of social justice. We ignore such warnings at our peril. The ACDP will definitely not support this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We invite the Honorable Zivi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable members, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, good afternoon. Chair, we live in interesting and dangerous times. Democracy is on the back foot in the United States and other parts of the world. The politics of hate, division and white supremacy are on the march, while collaboration and mutual respect on the international stage are under attack. This budget vote is not about public money and how we use it, but also how we best represent the values in our constitution, advance democracy, and build international cooperation based on a mutual project of peace and shared prosperity. Chair, in this debate, I want to raise two issues. The first is the need to be aggressive in the coordination of commercial diplomacy and trade policy. The weaponization of the tariff regime by the United States under President Donald Trump is an opportunity to press the reset button in how our embassies function, focus on, and the level of coordination where there is with South African businesses. After all, every single day, there are hundreds of people crisscrossing the globe looking for and realizing trade opportunities under the banner of our flag. We must have structured ways of helping and working with them so that we reduce reliance on a traditional trading partner in the United States that, sadly, is hell-bent on picking a fight with every one of its historical trading partners like ourselves. The second, Chair, relates to what I believe should be our approach to our relationship with the United States or the people of the United States. Donald Trump has come. He will go. The manner of his going may not be how previous presidents before him have exited, in that he may refuse to leave office. Between now and that time, the American people are likely to go through a difficult time under an increasingly oppressive and authoritarian regime. At a time like this, I think it is important to draw a distinction between the Trump administration and the American people, especially long-standing friends of ours in the civil rights movement, as well as Black and brown communities that stood with us during the darkest days of our struggle. They spoke up for us then. We must remember to speak up for and stand with them in the dark days ahead. Now is the time for all Democrats all over the world, those who believe in human rights and justice, to stand together and fight injustice everywhere. From the children of Gaza to the immigrants, Black and brown people about to go through the brutality of a police state in the United States. We will support this budget proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Zibi. We invite the Honorable Maiman.
Bagaetsho dumelang. Honorable members, I want to, perhaps if it's possible, for us to begin to think about one significant date that is coming, and it is the 1st of December, 2025. On that day, South Africa would have finished hosting the presidency of the G20, and it will hand over to the United States. Whether the event will be successful or not is neither here nor there. The question we should ask ourselves is, what did we get out of it, and what do we hope to achieve? In the light of that, the objectives are quite clear. Of course, all of the issues are raised. But when I look at historical countries that have had the privilege of being the chairmanship of the G20, only a few notable exceptions have taken maximum advantage of that. I can think of India in its ability to have been able to go, we chaired the G20 and therefore were able to drive our global agenda. South Africa, we need to be intentional and deliberate about what we are going to do with this moment. And I want to recommend, as per the words of President Nelson Mandela, that our foreign policy must always be guided by trade and human rights. And I would argue that there are a number of key steps that we need to take if we're to demonstrate to the world how seriously we want to take foreign policy. The first is that we need to be intentional about what we do here in the continent of Africa. We need to be clear that those who act as dictators in our continent cannot rely on our historical alliances. In places like Zimbabwe, Namibia, and Malawi, you can't simply turn a blind eye when elections are being rigged. For if they're being rigged there, they'll be rigged here. Our silence cannot mean consent. Secondly, it speaks to the issue of this very budget that we're tabling. We've got too many missions all over the world, and it's time now that we begin to reassess that. We spend over 5 billion rands on diplomatic missions all over the world. It's important that we reassess whether those are of any diplomatic or trade relations that are helping us. Thirdly, honorable members, I think we cannot ignore what took place in Washington recently. And it ultimately begs the question, what are we doing about our US relations? When tariffs kick in on another date, not so far from here today, it is going to be common cause that AGOA will be all but done away with, which means that we have to answer the question, why is it that still today, Minister Lamola, we don't have an ambassador in the US? Why are envoys still not there? It's crucial that we reestablish reset our relationships with the US. And therefore, ultimately, honorable members, in part of us maximizing what we do here in Africa, what we do all over the world, I want to leave you with the words that simply say that we neither should look east or west, but we should look forward. And Africa is our greatest opportunity. Let's maximize it, and therefore we'll support this budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We invite the Honorable Deputy Minister of Social Development.
Honorable House Chair, Al-Jamaa supports this budget. DIRCO has made us proud, and we also had heard that the Minister of International Relations got a medal and has also made us proud. We call on honorable members to support international law and not genocide. When Al-Jamaa gets the apartheid bill, which punishes apartheid activities passed in this House in terms of the convention that we signed, those honorable members who support Israel and genocide will have their day in court. We are sick and tired of PR stunts, visits to Israel, which we regard as an apartheid activity. And as you know, Honorable Chair, these members have been charged at the police station in Culloden Square. We also ask our comrades to honor agreements that Oliver Tambo signed on their behalf to help get weapons for the fight against apartheid. Western Sahara gave us 60 tanks and much more. Please don't trample on the grave of Oliver Tambo by going against agreements that he has signed. Al-Jamaa calls on DIRCO to be more proactive and support decolonization, a passion that the Minister of International Relations has. This year, 2025, marks the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the contemporary struggle of the Sahrawi people for their liberation and national determination. For those who are not aware, Western Sahara has been widely dubbed as Africa's last colony. There is also the Rif Republic, which is Africa's second last colony, both countries being occupied by Morocco. Those who have alliance with Morocco cannot claim to be part of the liberation struggle and support the foundational principles of the liberation fathers of Africa. Honorable Chair, the Rif Republic is doing a briefing in Algeria to file submission to the 4th Committee on Decolonization at the United Nations. We call on DIRCO to support them if they are part of this committee. 40 Rif activists remain jailed in Morocco for heavy sentences up to 20 years. Reminds us of the Ravonia trial. Recently, Mr. Rashi was released after enduring 12 years of illegal detention in Moroccan prisons. He was subjected to torture. We ask DIRCO to please support
Honorable
the Rif Republic. Thank you very much.
Your time has expired. We invite the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, the Honorable Moraka.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The Honorable Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, my colleague, the Deputy Minister and the Chair of the Portfolio Committee, of International Relations, Honorable Mahuma Pelo, and the esteemed members of this august house, senior officials from DIRCO, Gary Dumelang. Chairperson, let me start first by borrowing on the words of our Ghanaian politician, a political theorist, and a revolutionary of note, Kwame Nkrumah, who said the following: "I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me," close quote. I want to say to Honorable Minister Lamola that, Honorable Minister, the progressive South Africans who are patriotic to this country are waiting for your call to help them join hands in building a better Africa and a better world, which will be safe and secured for future generations to come. Therefore, Honorable Minister, you must never be deterred by those who are debating here in this house on the basis of their emotions where they are rejecting this budget. Because without this budget, there won't be a better Africa in the world that we seek to build. Honorable Speaker, DIRCO continues to strengthen its internal capacity to deliver on our foreign policy through this budget process. We are finalizing the departmental's organizational review structure, wherein we are going to be improving the efficiency and also optimize on the utilization of the resources and also align with our global opportunities. A major focus is on building a capable professional diplomatic corps in the continent and in the world at large. Through the Diplomatic Academy, we are enhancing skills in the economic diplomacy, conflict resolution, and mediation mechanisms. To date, Honorable Chair, over 1,000 African women have been trained in line with the UN's Resolution 1325, with representations from almost 16 African countries are going to benefit from this initiative. Honorable members, we are also launching a Youth Peace Mediators program in partnership with the country of Finland. Within this kind of initiative, young people from almost 15 countries that are aligned with the UN Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security issues are also going to benefit from this initiative. Honorable Chair, youth empowerment is a priority in our human resource plan through internships, the cadet programs that we continue to lead under your able leadership, Minister, and also the involvement of young people on matters of international engagements that continue to happen through our multilateral forums. The African Renaissance and the International Cooperation Fund remains a strategic tool for supporting peace and security and development and also integration in the continent of Africa. In the year 2025-2026 financial year, a total amount of 54.4 million has been allocated to support humanitarian assistance, democratic governance, and also observer missions in countries such as Malawi, Seychelles, and Tanzania, because, honorable members, these are the only 3 countries within SADC that are due for elections this year. So we as South Africa has to support them during this election process. While progress is being made across Africa in 19 elections that were held in 2024, we remain concerned about the ongoing conflicts in the continent, especially in Sudan, South Sudan, and also in the Sahel region. Honorable Chairperson, our relationship with China have been elevated to a strategic partnership in the new era, wherein we are expanding cooperation in the renewable energy and also in the electric vehicles that we always speak about, and the infrastructure and critical minerals in support of building a capable state of South Africa where everyone will participate in these inclusive economic initiatives that we have set for ourselves in this 7th administration. Honorable Chairperson, I want to thank you for the much attention that you have given me, and I want to say to Honorable Minister, Aluta continua, let's continue to represent South Africans in the continent and globally. Thank you very much.
Malibongwe.
Thank you, honorable members. We invite the Honorable Powell.
Thanks, Chairperson. As a nation, we find ourselves navigating an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape characterized by multipolarity, transactional diplomacy, and economic stagnation. For South Africa to succeed in this environment, we must abandon a foreign policy that prioritizes the ANC's fraternal alliances over our national interest. This outdated posture has cost us diplomatically, economically, and morally. Just last month, Deputy President Paul Mashatile and no fewer than 8 cabinet ministers and deputies descended on Vladimir Putin's Russia under the guise of economic diplomacy. At the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, hosted to assist Russia to explore new pathways to bypass Western sanctions, ANC executive members rubbed shoulders with war criminals and global pariahs at the taxpayers' expense, while Kiev counted its dead from Russia's brutal missile strikes that killed more than 20 civilians and injured over 150 civilians on the same day the summit kicked off. During a portfolio committee meeting that week, ANC MP Moraka defended this grotesque junket and the obscenity of its excess, doubling down on what she called South Africa's long-standing and enduring friendship with the Putin regime, praising our nation's so-called shared values. What shared values are these? House Chairperson, at a time when South Africa struggles to feed their families and face record unemployment, 8 ministers enjoy luxury hotel rooms, business class tickets, and chauffeur-driven convoys while aligning our nation with warlords under the banner of multipolarism. This is not a foreign policy for South Africans. It is a foreign policy for the ANC's friends. And the ANC now need to make peace with the fact that their time is up. And so, despite a 6.7 billion rand allocation to DIRCO this year, our global influence continues to wane. DIRCO has become a shadow of its former self, crippled by cadre deployment and ideological posturing at the expense of our largest and most critical trade and investment partners. Embassy closures, unfilled diplomatic posts, and repeated audit disclaimers paint a picture of a department in decline. South Africa's foreign policy agenda should be grounded in our constitutional values and focused on economic development. But instead of advancing democracy, justice, freedom, and equality, we continued to get hackneyed Soviet-era slogans and overt alignment with regimes that reject South Africa's constitutional principles on which our democracy is built. This directly undermines our credibility as an emerging middle power. In a country where over a third are unemployed and more than half live in poverty, foreign policy should be used to unlock opportunity, not deter trade and investment. It is time for South Africa to become a principled and dependable global partner, not a bedfellow to authoritarian regimes and theocratic dictatorships. A DA-led DIRCO would prioritize economic diplomacy, build a professional and merit-based foreign service, and restore our credibility through consistent and principled international engagement. A modern DIRCO requires a fit-for-purpose budget that serves our national interest, strengthens our strategic partnership, and repositions South Africa as a capable middle power. Whilst we strongly support South Africa's engagement in multilateral institutions such as the SADC, the AU, and the UN, we are concerned by the 834 million rand that's allocated for membership contributions without there being any clear performance metrics or evaluations of strategic value. Equally troubling is the 171 million rand earmarked for the African Renaissance Fund, which serves as a patronage vehicle for the ANC's political interests. Consider the tens of millions of rands dispersed to Cuba over the past decade, without a shred of...
Powell, Can you take a seat? Honorable member,
Ngiyathokoza mceli sihlalo. Benginombuzo ku honorable member. Ungambuza ukuthi angawuthatha umbuzo na. Ngoba ngibona ngathi ngicusela amakhuwa kuphela la.
thank you, honorable member.
Oh.
Umbuza lokho cha, kumele mina ngikubuzele yena. Switch off your mic.
Ngiyathokoza Chair.
Switch off your mic. Honorable Powell, are you prepared to take a question?
Not at this point, afterwards.
Agafuni ukuthatha umbuzo wakhe. Continue, Honorable Powell.
To revitalize South Africa's standing in the global community, DIRCO must now introduce a truly meritocratic appointment system, attain and attract skilled professionals, rationalize our diplomatic footprint by retaining dedicated missions only in our top 35 trading partner countries, while deploying honorary consuls to the remainder. We need to work in lockstep with the Department of Trade and Industry to make sure that trade and economic diplomacy form the cornerstone of our engagements in the world. The days of hollow grandstanding and selective application of international law must now end. We need to begin acting with active consistency instead of selective outrage. The era of South Africa's foreign policy being guided by ideological nostalgia is well and truly over, and we urge the ANC to finally make peace with this reality. The DA will continue to represent South Africa's national interests on the global stage, shoring up trust and credibility with our largest and most important trading partners, and once again, ensuring that we act in the interests of advancing our long-standing and enduring shared values of democracy and constitutionalism the world over. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Powell. We'll now invite the Honorable Kumbaka.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister Lamola, Honorable Deputy Minister Moroka, Honorable Deputy Minister Botes, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of International Relations and Cooperation, Honorable Mahuma Pilo, Honorable members, fellow South Africans. Today, we rise not merely to debate a budget, we rise to confront the soul of our foreign policy, a policy that must be revolutionarily, unapologetically African and firmly rooted in the values of the Freedom Charter and the living legacy of the liberation struggle. We are the product of struggle, of sacrifice, and international solidarity. We come from a movement that forged bonds with Cuba, the Soviet Union, Palestine, and the people of Africa when the world turned its back on us. That history must guide this House as we reflect on Budget Vote 6. Today, we have assembled to debate Budget Vote 6 for the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, a vote that is pivotal to our pursuit of our national interests, both domestically and abroad. We meet at a moment of global upheaval where the violent machinery of empires is again on display. In Gaza, we witness a genocide unfolding before our eyes. In Sudan, the scramble for resources bleeds the people. In the DRC, multinational corporations extract rare minerals while leaving behind death and displacement. In Haiti, Western-backed interventionists persist under the guise of humanitarianism. Let us speak plainly. The international system is rigged against the global South. The so-called multilateral order is in deep crisis, captured by the interests of a few imperial powers. The UN Security Council in its current form is a relic of colonial power. As the ANC, we do not beg for a seat at the table, we demand the total restructuring of global governance. The rise in protectionism and unilateralism has weakened the multilateral order that South Africa has tirelessly helped to build since 1994. Honorable members, in the eye of the storm, South Africa must hold its ground and must be resilient and principled. Our foreign policy, guided by the values of our constitution, must embody our belief in our principles such as human dignity and equality. We cannot tire in working toward a fair and more equitable world. This is a precondition for peace. And we cannot fund a foreign policy that reproduces neo-colonial dependency. The budget presented by DIRCO affirms Africa's sovereignty and accelerates our development agenda and also defends the oppressed. DIRCO has presented that it's not a passive administrator of diplomacy, but it is a fighter for the people, a voice for a people's republic on the world stage. Honorable members, we welcome DIRCO's strategic plan of the financial year 2025 to 2030 and its annual performance plan for the financial year 2025-2026. But let's be clear, we want more than just targets. We want revolutionary targets. We want trade deals that delink us from the dollar and the euro. We want investment in people, not platitudes. We want embassies that are political schools, even for young African diplomats, and not just PR offices. The total budget allocation to DIRCO is 7 billion, and it includes international relations programs and also international transfers. But these must not be viewed as a mere expense, but rather as a revolutionary investment in shaping a new global order. The 3.4 billion for international programs centers around African development, liberation, solidarity, and people-to-people diplomacy. And that is why, one of the reasons why we support this budget. This budget must also finance our mission to advance Pan-African integration from policy harmonization under the African free trade area to the realization of free movement of people across the continent. Honorable members, the 55 million allocation to the ARF must be used with a clear political lens to support mediation efforts that put the people first, not elite deals brokered in foreign capitals, to send more observer missions, especially where democracy, and to invest in post-conflict reconstruction rooted in sovereignty, public health systems, and education. Honorable members, the geopolitical turbulence we see around us should remind us of our responsibility to realize the UN's Sustainable Development Goals in our country and wherever we have influence. DIRCO must continue to forge strategic partnerships with our neighbors and where our prosperity is tied to others. DIRCO's plans and budget outline a path to strengthen South Africa's global influence, champion Africa's peace and development, and promote inclusive economic growth through strategic partnerships. But we must, as a portfolio committee, ensure that we empower DIRCO to use platforms such as the UN, BRICS, and AU to champion debt relief for African nations and insist on fair climate financing and advocate for more accessible global climate mechanisms. Our presidency of the G20 under the theme Solidarity, Equality, and Sustainability allows us to elevate Africa's voice in global decision-making. Fellow South Africans, let us be clear. Economic diplomacy must be revolutionary diplomacy. It must empower rural producers, small-scale miners and cooperatives and informal traders. If a small citrus farmer in Sarabatman cannot export due to tariff barriers, DIRCO would have failed them. But we see that efforts have been made in the APP plans to ensure that trade barriers are addressed. If African markets are closed to our products while foreign goods flood our shelves, we are still a colony. This budget affords us a chance of protecting our sovereignty and advancing our interests. We must also remember that we must not pretend we are safe. South Africa is not immune to regime change agendas, economic sabotage, and political destabilization. This budget must strengthen our international posture to protect our sovereignty and democratic order. As this committee, we must empower DIRCO to deliver on 60 structured bilateral mechanisms, 60 economic diplomacy activities, and 60 tourism promotion events in the financial year 2025-2026. These targets are essential to reindustrialization, youth employment, and inclusive growth. Honorable members, DIRCO must also ensure that effective emissions are available to open markets for South African products. We note the structural challenges in the department because we know DIRCO spends 60% of its budget abroad and also with administration in terms of salaries for the workers. But DIRCO must work with National Treasury to develop a hedging and contingency strategy for this matter. And international solidarity, like I said, is not charity. And it's very clear that the department is very intentional when it comes to this approach. And this budget vote affirms that it's a tool in the hands of the poor, and therefore we must ensure that cooperation wins over conflict and development wins over debt, and climate justice secures a home for all. In closing, we must stand united across party lines in defending the mandate of DIRCO and the ARF. This is not a neutral budget, it is a political tool, and let us wield it with courage. We cannot allow this budget to be derailed by hypocrites who ran off to Israel to endorse racism and oppression, and so-called revolutionaries, the Gwazists, who have enthusiastically backed up Morocco. Let us not betray the principles of our foreign policy for political convenience or personal gain. And let us never forget the words of Comrade Owar Tambo, that it is our responsibility to break with all the shackles that keep our people in bondage. And international solidarity is not an act of charity, it is an act of humanity and justice. We therefore call on this House to support Budget Vote 6, not out of compliance, but out of conviction, to defend our revolution, to speak for the voiceless, to champion Africa, and to keep South Africa as a bold, independent, and revolutionary force in the world. I invite this House to support Budget Vote 6 without reservation, and as the ANC, we support Budget Vote 6. Let us keep South Africa a respected, principled, and visionary voice on the continent and in the world. I thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. We invite the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation to respond and close the debate.
Thank you, Honorable House Chairperson. We welcome the Damascus moment of the MK Party on the right of self-determination for the people of Palestine, but shocked at the contradictions at the same time with regards to Western Sahara and Morocco. You can't speak about self-determination for Palestine and not do the same thing for the people of Western Sahara. This is the highest level of confusion. Action SA says South Africa don't know how to spell some of the cities in the continent, and this includes Malabo in Equatorial Guinea. She must ask the family of the two South Africans, Mr. Huksam and Mr. Potgieter, that our mission in Malabo helped and assisted when they were in prison for 2 years. They also assisted them to return back to South Africa. And these are not the only families that have been relieved by our missions across the globe. In Myanmar, when South Africans were stranded, they were assisted and helped our missions. In many parts of the globe, Yemen, you name it, Iraq, all kinds of places, Sudan, our missions have been there. So there is no one who can claim that this is diplomatic tourism. It is not diplomatic tourism, are the necessary missions that we need to keep and have. This level of confusion has reached a crescendo with the DA, Honorable Powell. She claims that our ministers were involved in some laxatives in Russia and forgets to mention that these are the same basic tools of trade that Minister Steenhuisen uses, Minister Malati uses, Minister George uses, and Minister George travels similarly to Minister Lamula across the globe. So this is the highest level of hypocrisy, is the highest level of confusion for the DA. They don't know whether they want to govern, whether they want to be part of the GNU, or they are part of the opposition, or they are somewhere in between. This is a shapeless amoeba. Maybe as soon as you find your conference, because it's clear that it depends on which faction of the DA is speaking, to understand where do you stand. We are neither looking east nor west. We are marching forward. The statement of intent that underpins the GNU informs our work. It is very clear that we are underpinned by the Constitution, a human rights outlook, We are underpinned by Agenda 2063 of the African Union. We have to advance progressive internationalism. This is not just ANC policy. It's the policy of the government of South Africa, which the DA is part of the GNU. So if you did not read properly the statement of intent, you may need to revisit it. We are not doing anything that you did not sign for. In the statement of intent, when we deal with our human rights outlook, whether it's in Gaza, it is part of the statement of intent. Whether it's in relations to Ukraine and Russia, where we have played the role to bring back the children of the people of Ukraine, it is through the statement of intent. When we deal with all these issues.
Honorable Minister, take your seat. Honorable, switch off that mic.
I'll share.
Honorable member, allow me to.
In the statement of intent.
Honorable member, allow me to recognize you first.
Okay.
Switch off that mic. You are now recognized, honorable member.
In the statement of intent, did the ANC induct the DA?
Member, that's honorable member. Honorable member.
Would like to know if the DA was inducted about.
Please do not abuse the rules.
What rule is there?
Because it's like the DA is in state of confusion.
What are you rising on? What?
Honorable member, please do not abuse the rules. Honorable Minister, you may continue. Order, honorable members.
Yeah, indeed, the statement of intent is public, is there for the DA to reread it again. We are guided by the Constitution. We are guided by the national interest document. We can also interpret it in any language to make Honorable Powell to understand it perfectly. We are very clear. We are marching forward on progressive internationalism. And we are not doing anything outside the policies that have been adopted by the government of the Republic of South Africa. So we are doing the job entrusted to us by the people of South Africa in terms of all the policies that we are doing. We are not on a frolic of our own. We are acting in the national interest. With regards to the decline, there is no truth in the fact that the department has declined. In fact, we have reached an unqualified audit. The department is improving. We are moving ahead. With regards to downsizing and making the department fit for purpose, maybe honorable members of the portfolio committee have forgotten. We have closed 13 embassies to make the department linear, fit for purpose, and to continue with our progressive internationalism. And we'll continue to serve South Africans across the board, irrespective of color. And there is no democratic alliance that has got a right in terms of our constitution to represent the people of South Africa. You can only represent your constituency and the members of the DA. As ourselves, as government, we represent all South Africans. Thank you.
Thank you. Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Malunga lahloniphekile ifike emaphethelweni inkulumo mbikiswano eliphakelo letimali. Indlu yesishayamthetho ingasukuma.
Well done.
So, my son, well done.